Welcome to History Pub. The Cottage Grove Genealogical Society and the Downtown Cottage Grove sponsor the History Pub. But in Cottage Grove we have a group of historic organizations that all work together. We collaborate, and those are the Cottage Grove Historical Museum, the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society, the Oregon Aviation Society, the Cottage Grove Historical Society, the Cottage Grove Library, Bohemian Mining Museum, and Singing Creek.
Now this is the New Boggy Baptist Church, not to be confused with the Old Boggy Baptist Church. And it is just like the name says, sounds B-O-G-G-Y. And I'll tell you where it got that. But first, something I highly recommend. Public Broadcasting did, I think it was a 4-part series called The Black Church, and I highly recommend it. It's an extremely entertaining series, very well done, and it talks about the role of the black church in the African American community, because it was a lot stronger than the churches that white people went to. The black church was what got people through slavery, the Jim Crow laws, segregation. People would go to church for, and still to this day, Jesus and God there. If you're sick, that's the healer, because many people could not afford doctors. If you've been arrested, he's the lawyer that can get you out of it. You go to church, and Mother Miller was always telling me, I'd call her up with the problems, she's just telling me, turn it over to God. Turn it over to God. This is the inside of the New Boggy Baptist Church. They got screens up there now. But I remember in the pulpit area, I remember this as a little boy. And they stream their services on Facebook. So if you go to Facebook and look for New Boggy Baptist Church, you can see their services. And tomorrow night the pastor will be having the Wednesday night service and that's him right there, Dr. Britton Johnson, young man, about 32 years old, born and raised in the church, grew up. He's got a PhD. I really like him. This is the 150th year anniversary book of the New Boggy Baptist Church. And the reason why I have that in there is that, well, there's pictures of the church as it evolved over the years, from 1869 to now. But this is the page in that book that's devoted to the Hearn family, and you see they got Mr. and Mrs. Steve Williamson. We're down here in the lower corner. We're the only white people in this 150th. There's the names of some white people who donated land years ago. But I'm very proud of being in that book because Mother Mildred was so good to me, and I was a pallbearer at her funeral. She left instructions. She wanted me seated with her other children. I was her special son. Her special son. I love that. And oh yeah, this is one of the gates to the cemetery. Show that because they can't see it very well. Karen and I went in with the Hearn family, and got this and helped them get this gate. Somebody crashed their car into the old gate and needed to be replaced. So yeah, I'm really proud of having the Williamson name. That's one of the things. I told my daughter-in-law, she said, wait, I know why you're going down there. You have roots down there. And I said, yes, I have roots down there. But I'm going also because I want to grow trees. As a metaphor, not trees, but as a metaphor. And that's me at her grave. I got a real sad expression on my face. This spot here, this is where slaves were sold. This is a well behind that right now. But this is just before you get to the state line and this is where they sold slaves. And a lot of slaves go in between Louisiana and Texas. A lot of people going between Texas and Louisiana, both slave-owning states, were sold right there. And it's just that's when you can actually stand on the spot where human beings were sold. Now this is another graveyard that I first thought could be. I was looking for the original graveyard for the Boggy Baptist Church that slaves, people who had been born slaves, were buried in. And I find this one, and this actually has Confederates in it. Couple of their graves. This man died in 1811, so it's going back a long way. He's born in 1770, and that's George Harrison's grave over that one right there. George Harrison's grave right there. Yeah, I don't know if it's a Beatle. I don't think so. I had to put it in George Harrison's name. And a backside of the cemetery, the main road right there. We passed it all the time. And this smiling young man and his lady, about a half hour before took this picture, he was holding a rifle on me because I didn't ask permission to go looking at this graveyard. And when you're doing something like that, sometimes you don't want to ask permission. It's easier to ask for forgiveness. Because they might say, no, you can't go there. No. But so I can ask for forgiveness. So he comes up with his gun and takes me back. I tell him what I'm doing, and he takes me back to meet his grandmother there. And she was the one who actually knew exactly where the old cemetery I was looking for, and pointed it out to me. And this black man right there is a longtime family friend, and it was funny. He had his rifle on me, and I had my arms out, kind of like this, and he takes me up to their house, and I'm trying to tell him who I am, and I'm rattling off all these names. Like my grandfather built the Lickskillet Ranch. I was raised by Mildred Hearn. And when I said the name Mildred Hearn, the door cracked open a little bit, and a woman called out, "You were raised by Mildred Hearn?" "I was raised by Margaret Mays." "Ah, that's her sister." So instantly, this woman and I had a connection that we were both raised by women from the same family. And when Margaret Mays got very old, they bought her a trailer and pulled it up on their property there, and she spent her remaining years living on the Crenshaw property there. Really good folks. But yeah, nice young. So glad we got. I had guns pointed at me 3 or 4 times. Fortunately, nobody ever shot. But he's made friends now. And this is this is the location of where the original Boggy Baptist Church was, and back in those woods is the old cemetery. Yeah, back in here, and there's all these headstones, and a lot of graves aren't marked with headstones. But you can find these on Find a Grave, and I'm hoping to get the little cemetery back into the new Boggy Baptist Church's name, because right now it's owned by a person who lives out of town. It's a tiny little place. It's probably no bigger than twice the size of the Axe and Fiddle. Maybe not even twice the size of the Axe and Fiddle. And here's some of the headstones. And this is where the Boggy Bayou comes in and is flooded. You know, some of the graves. And yeah, I'm crawling around in there, and I was very aware that there could be water moccasins, alligators, yeah, just leeches. Yes, we got leeches too. Just whatever. And I'm crawling around in there, but it was so Y'all know me. Am I going to leave a place just because of a cottonmouth moccasin or an alligator? If I'm really interested in it, no way. So, and this is Boggy Bayou, very small. School bus. I rode a school bus for an hour and a half every afternoon coming home from school. That's how I read every book in the school library. And the school bus used to come up to this spot right here and then make a right turn. And I wasn't sure I was going to tell you this story. I've taken out some of the graphic things. But I was on the bus 4:15 or so in the afternoon. And there used to be a fence across here. And that cemetery I showed you with the Confederates running to the side. But there was a fence there. And on that fence was hanging a dead black man. And he had been shot in the stomach with a shotgun. His whole stomach was blown, chest was blown away. And they hung him up on the fence. Kind of like a scarecrow. And he had his hat on him. His legs were spread open. He'd been castrated. And yeah, the school bus had to turn with school bus, the big turning radius turns, got real close to that fence. And there was only about 4 of us on the bus then, but we got a good view of it. And I just never has left my mind. For years later, I asked Mother Mildred about it, and I said, this memory is so horrible, I can't really believe that I saw this. Is it true? Oh yeah, she remembered me seeing it, she remembered it. And it was in the very early 60s, and what happened was a black man and a married white woman had an affair. Just didn't do that in that area. And in fact, it was legal if you caught the man with your wife, you could kill them legally right there. So he might have been legally murdered, killed. But hanging him up on the fence is abuse of a corpse. At that time, it was in 1968 when I was in high school, Texas changed their law, and they allowed the women's lib came to Texas, so they changed the law and allowed women to kill the husbands if they caught the husband with another woman. Yeah, that's home. Yeah, this is what the gate looks like. This gate after we sold it, the people that took it renamed it the Lickskillet Plantation because it had been part of a plantation at one time. But we never called it a plantation. My grandmother didn't like that whole idea. And they raised thoroughbred racehorses, really expensive, top quality thoroughbred racehorses. And this is the brochure of it, and then they also had a riding program for people with disabilities that they ran out of the ARC, the Association for Retarded Citizens, out of Caddo Parish, and it was a riding program for kids and folks there. And she was married to the coroner of Caddo Parish, and then a terrible thing happened. They found out that he hadn't been doing the coroner examinations like he claimed and wrote down. They found bodies that hadn't been examined. Underlings, people that weren't qualified, had done the autopsies. Yeah, there's one sign left, Lickskillet Plantation. And appropriately, that's my Cadillac. I took a lot of pictures of that car because when am I ever going to drive a Cadillac again? I certainly wouldn't buy one. That's kind of the view I saw out my window at my house. The barn that my grandfather built. This is a really good story. And that's everything my grandfather built. He was an amazing builder. Everything he built still stands And these are the stairs going up to the loft where we used to go and play. And me and my brother, we fought a lot, much more than regular brothers did. And Mother Mildred, well, I'll get to that. She had an explanation for that she told Karen. So here I am pointing out the loft up there. And one time my brother beat me up pretty bad. He was 2.5 years older than me. And he opened the door to the loft and was just sitting there, and I was in the back, and I just was really furious, and I ran up behind him and I kicked him as hard as I could. He went flying off the top, down, and he broke his arm. And I do have a couple of good memories of my brother. There he is with a broken arm that I gave him. I don't have very many good memories of my brother at all. He was still, my wife never met him. Did you ever talk to him? On the phone once or so. We were talking with Mother Mildred, and my wife asked her, well, how can we get these two brothers back together? And I'll never forget what she did. She got up out of her chair, and apparently this is one of her signature moves that her kids have told me when she was really angry about something. She got up out of the chair, she got right in Karen's face and said, you don't get them together. You keep them apart. Keep them apart. And Karen's just absolutely stunned. No, and then she said that we were not raised like brothers to love each other. My grandfather wanted an heir for his company. We were raised and encouraged to fight. And whoever was the strongest would be the leader of the company someday. Now, they didn't explain that to me very clearly when I was a kid, so I really didn't know quite all this stuff. But yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense, because my grandfather was disappointed with his two sons, so he was hoping that his grandsons would be leaders of the company. And nope. There's Karen by the back lake there. And there's some longhorn cattle. We raised black Angus cattle out there. They have a few longhorns out there today. And well, I thought I had Karen's picture with the longhorn cattle. She took a selfie with a longhorn. But this is one of the spots that I used to go to and hide out and read books. A little old service building for a natural gas well. And Karen walking on one of the roads. My grandfather built roads all over the place. He was great with that. And this is part of the horse ranch. More of the horse ranch. Oh, I wish you could see this better, because this is really nice. You see these little Christmas lights? They're made from shotgun shells. Yeah, I know I'm back home when I see something like that. This is a gun culture. Yes. Everybody has a gun. This is the gym of the school that I went to, and I only have it in here to show right across this road there on the right. There used to be a broken down house with an old woman that lived there, and different adults at the school. All the adults at the school told us never go over to her house. Don't walk on that side of the road. She's a witch. Or she's just simply an old crazy woman. But she would sit out on the porch and kind of cackle and make faces at you, and you know, I always wanted to go talk to her. They were really naughty. You stay away from that woman. I don't know if she ever did anything wrong, anything to anybody. But I don't know how many of y'all know that I have epilepsy, and I didn't remember it myself. When I was 60 years old, I had these 2 or 3 really humongous seizures starting off in the bed at home. And one went on for a long time. and they got me in the hospital. I was in the neurology unit, private room for like 3 days, 2.5 days, while they're looking at my brain and everything. And I woke up in there. It's funny about a seizure in that I say I woke up, but apparently I've been in that hospital bed for 2 days, signing papers, answering questions. They ask you these awareness questions. How aware are you? Do you know where you are? And they asked me, okay, where are you? You know, we're at Riverbend Hospital. I told them we were in Idaho. Okay, why are we in Idaho? And the nurse said, why are we in Idaho? And I said, to attend President Kennedy's memorial. That is about as, you know, that is what happens in the wake of a seizure. And they videotape you every minute you're in the neurology, because you're going to take your driver's license away, but they don't tell you that right away. You're going to lose your driver's license for a while, so they want proof, absolute proof that you said those things in response to those questions. And I had this really nice nurse who was patting me on the head. So we get back home, and Karen's, you know, we've been married like 30 years by that time. This has never come up before, and she's kind of really freaked out and wants to know what on earth caused this. And I called Mother Mildred and told her about it. And then the next day she called and said, son, you had spells when you were a boy. I had to come pick you up at the school twice. Then I remembered having seizures on the playground. And this right here is a bookmark from the inside of the only book that I brought from Louisiana out here. It was a historical book about East Texas that meant a lot to my grandmother and mother. And they would read the book, we'd go out and look for the places that were mentioned in the book and the graves and things. And I was a little kid. But in the front of the book, Karen wanted to read a fictional book. So I said, oh, here, my mother and grandmother like this. So I gave it to her. And she said, do you know what's in the inside of this book? No. And there she, you know, we're wondering, you know, when the seizure started, what happened. On the inside of the book is a little, what do they call them, book plates, not bookmarks, but, you know, when run the book plate on the inside of the book. This book belongs to Mabel Campbell, Greenwood, Louisiana, and it says open schools to epileptics. Because at that time, the schools weren't mandated to take kids with epilepsy. That didn't happen until Bob Dole got the Americans with Disabilities Act passed in the 70s. A lot of schools did admit kids, but this was a really rural school, like 26 miles from the nearest doctor. And they didn't want me back. They just didn't want me back. My grandmother and mother, I think, got involved with the art. The Epilepsy Foundation was just getting started at that time. And they got me into school, which I don't think made the teachers very happy because I never did very well at school. But I'm pointing there, that's where I had my first seizure that I remember. I was probably about 7, had the seizure when I was running, fell down flat, and what they noticed was I didn't try to break my fall. I had all these scars and blood all over my face and chest, but my hands were perfectly fine. And they didn't know it was a seizure yet. And that was something the doctor picked up on. And people thought, oh, there's nothing wrong with his hands. Look at his hands. You know, because when you fall, you try to break your fall with your hands. I was completely out of it. Okay, this is in the Greenwood School. Some of you have heard this story about my, long search for Mrs. Bruce. Another thing I can thank Deborah Monson for helping me find Mrs. Bruce. And I had been wanting to thank her for 50 years, 60 years. And she caught me reading in my 7th grade class. I had one book inside another. And she comes up to the desk, what are you reading? pulls it out, and it was a book about the Battle of Waterloo and Napoleon. And she says, why are you reading this? And I launched into this long explanation about how Napoleon sold Louisiana to finance his European wars. And she just looked at me and said, well, you really are smart, aren't you? Because I had nothing but bad grades. And that was the first teacher ever to say I was smart. And wow, you talk about falling in love like a puppy dog with her. Oh, wow, she was. And so I would be back there and I would ask friends and people, do you know Mrs. Bruce? Is there any teacher named Mrs. Bruce? Nope, nobody ever. And I'd ask teachers, nobody ever heard of her. And what turns out was that she only taught that 1 year in the public school. That was 1963 when Kennedy got shot. And she was Catholic, and she's teaching in a very Protestant area. And when Kennedy was shot, the principal came in and told us, this guy, I think there's more than a couple of guys, one guy in particular I remember, he just started whooping and hollering and applauding. He was ever so happy that President Kennedy had been shot. And she was a very devout Catholic. She only taught that 1 year, but then she worked at the home extension and got just legendary in another parish for that. Became the first woman from that area elected to the Louisiana legislature. And yeah, she was a Democrat elected in what is a very strongly Republican area. So that was great. But by the time I got back there, she died a week before I got there, and she had Alzheimer's. And I wrote this letter to her thanking her, and the priest, Monsignor, read part of the letter at her funeral. And yes, and that's the classroom. That little building right there held the 7th grade. In the middle there was the library, and on that side was the 8th grade science. We crammed a lot in there. And I failed the 7th grade. So, and just to show you I am dumb, there's my transcript from LSU Shreveport. After 3 years, I've got a cumulative GPA of 1.27. They kicked me out 3 times, but I never dropped out. I'm proud of that. Never dropped out of school. They had to kick me out. I tried to get back in, but 3 times was their limit, and they declared me an academic bankrupt. Yeah. and yeah, an academic bankrupt. And then something I'm extremely proud of, I get a courtesy appointment, which they have for visiting scholars at the University of Oregon, doing research on Opal Whitely, collecting and helping them put Opal Whitely's diary on the web and finding pictures of the real people and the real places that she wrote about. So, and this is where they sent me after I failed the 7th grade in the Greenwood School. This school is in town, Broadmoor, is a real good school, but I swear this is true. I thought if I got caught doing something really bad, like trying to set fire to the school, that they'd kick me out and I could go back to Greenwood. This church, the Antioch Baptist Church, I saw, we were driving back to Lickskillet, and I saw a deputy on a horse. I'm pretty sure the horse was white or at least gray. And he's got a long rifle. And he rides that horse right into the church. I mean, there's a whole troop of armed police officers behind him. What's he going into the church for and bringing all these police into the church with their guns out? They were having a meeting on voting rights. And I found out this from a young man whose uncle was one of the pastors there. And that was just something that I will never forget, and it's hard to wrap my mind around today. you know, something like that. Imagine the police, you know, Cottage Grove police riding a horse inside, you know, Methodist church or church that they can get with a door big enough to get a horse in. But yeah, the Antioch Baptist Church is on the National Registry of Historic Places, actually for its architecture. There's a lot of civil rights history in this church, but it made it on the National Registry for its architecture. This is a mural right next to it. A voteless people is a hopeless people. Encouraging people to vote. And the full moon over Lickskillet. Oh God. Okay, Lickskillet gunfight. If you can handle a little bit more, this is where my brother and I said we fought all of our lives. Mother Mildred told Karen that my grandfather was looking for an heir for his company, and the strongest would get him, maybe the one who survived. But there were very few restrictions on us. It was the handyman and Mother Mildred who raised us. And you know, my brother and I, we got guns. I think I was 4 or 5 years old. I got my first gun, and we were always around shooting. When I was 10, he was 12. It's really significant that our father wasn't there, because I think if my father had been there, Clay would have grown up and developed differently, and we wouldn't have had this kind of trouble. Here we are at about the time, there's Clay, my big brother, and there's me. I'm smaller, fatter, and that's us after we've been fishing. And there's the house where it happened. And that's my old bedroom. That was his. That's the kitchen door where we kept our guns, right next to the door. And he comes up to me with this .22 rifle raised and pointed right at me. He's 12, I'm 10. He says, "Get your gun and fight me like a man." Get your gun, fight me like a man. But my brother, there's a real strain of insanity through the family, and my brother was definitely part of that. So, you know, he gets off a shot or two at me. I run inside, I grab my gun, run out the door, around the side of the house, I fire a shot or so at him. He fires another shot at me. I think he could have hit me here, but he would have hit me in the back. And reflecting on it, I think his whole purpose was to goad me into a fight that he could claim I started. And he did claim I started it. And he might, but if he shot me in the back, that wouldn't have flown. So he had to get me in the front. So we come around the side of the house, shooting. They're in the front yard. There were trees there. I stop, turn around, and I've got my gun pointed perfectly at him when he comes around. I've got the most perfect shot. And it sounds terrible to say, but I've revisited this a number of times in my mind, whether I'm glad I didn't shoot or whether I regret not shooting, because it caused me and a lot of people a lot of trouble over the years. Yeah, but we don't want 10-year-old boys making that decision. So right behind us, the handyman, Willie, had been working nearby, thank God. And he comes running up behind us. He's firing his own pistol and yelling. And so we stopped shooting. And that's the only thing that saved one of us. And Willie took our guns away. My brother got furious. He called Willie a stupid N. You know, a stupid N. And I was so happy because I knew Clay would get in trouble for that. I wasn't confident he'd get in trouble for trying to shoot me. He would get in trouble for calling Willie that. So Willie marched us to our grandfather. He told my grandfather that he heard my brother's gun going off first, because if you know guns, they make different sounds. I think he had a Remington 22, I had a Winchester 22. They sound differently. He knew, and Willie heard my brother's gun first. But my brother convinced him, my grandfather, that he had just shot kind of near me and didn't mean to. And I got mad and went in and got my gun and started the whole fight. And he says, and my grandfather bought it. So I got spanked. I got spanked for starting this gunfight with my brother. Now Clay got spanked for calling Willie a name. So we both got spanked. But yeah, life growing up in the country. Okay, and now then when Clay is 16, he drops out of high school and he just disappears in Asia and the Middle East. He doesn't phone, he doesn't send a card, anything back for over 15 years. And when I met Karen out here, I had not seen him in over 15 years, and well over half my life. And he was just gone. I hoped he was dead. Unfortunately, he wasn't, and one night, in the middle of the night, we get this phone call. We're living in Cottage Grove on 3rd Street. We get this phone call from the Philippines. They wanted $20,000 because he was in jail and they were going to deport him. And they wanted my address. So they wanted me to pay $20,000 to have my brother sent to him. I did not do it. They did deport him anyway. He went to my father in Shreveport. And we just continued the fight. It just picked up right where it left off. I made a number of overtures over the next few years to try to, be a brother to him because my father wanted me to. Mother had passed away, but those never worked. Oh, and he. Okay, this is him it's a few years before he died. He actually, I think, weighed about 400 pounds when he died. He's just not quite 300 or around 300 in this picture. He had this, get this for a delusion. And he would scream at me that I was the one responsible for him getting imprisoned in the Philippines. Yeah, me. Because I was in league with Ferdinand Marcos, you remember him, and Isabel Marcos with the thousands of shoes that she had. I was in league with the Marcoses and the industrialist Armand Hammer and Van Cliburn, the pianist that I mentioned. The four of us were in league to take over the Philippines. Now, the grain of truth that runs through that is that my grandfather did know Armand Hammer. And he did visit the Greenwood property. I don't remember, but I was told there was a link there. My grandmother was Van Cliburn's first piano teacher. We knew Van Cliburn when we were little boys. Ferdinand Marcos, I'm not sure how, he was president of the Philippines. But I give you my word, folks, I didn't try to overthrow the Philippines and take control of it. Might have been, I later got into the Asian celebration, but I have never mentioned that in over 20 years of the Asian celebration. I have never mentioned that story that my brother accused me. I think this is the first time I've talked about it. Accused me of trying to take over the Philippines. I found something else when he died, and I saw him like 3 times in his later years after he was deported and came back here. And each time, I couldn't carry a handgun in Louisiana, but I had a really big knife on me each time, and he was armed each time. We were both ready for the other to do something. And the terrible thing is I wanted him to make a move. I was so sick and tired of it. And then he dies, and here's a letter. A nice little note sent to him by a friend of his named Keith, who was thanking him for his generosity. Interesting thing about this letter, it came from a prison. My brother was sending money to 5 different men in 5 different prisons who are all going to get out within 2 or 3 years. This guy here, he was sending money. This guy was in Pendleton. So he's sending there, I don't remember the other places, I've got all these papers. But he was sending money to this guy in Pendleton. And I don't know what he was doing, putting together a little gang. He's sending money, you know, making really grateful friends out of prisoners. Oh, and we found out that he had told about 4 people that he was going to leave them as his heir in his will, because he just hated me and he wanted to leave them as his heir. He would tell somebody you're going to leave them, you're putting them as an heir in their will. They like you. They, you know, they'll do stuff for you. But there's a where he paid $20,000 to get some guy out of a New Orleans jail, and this cashier's check sent to this prisoner in Pendleton. And I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't put it past my brother to have been gathering those guys for an attack on me. And I told him one time that I wouldn't bother him if any place in the world that he lived. Don't come across the Oregon state line. And I even talked to friends of mine at the state and Lane County that if he came to Oregon, he was probably coming to possibly kill me. So they were ready. If I called them and had my brother across the state line, they would pick him up on a 3-day observation hold. And I knew my brother would never make it out in 3 days. They picked him up and put him in a psych hospital. Oh, he would do all the rest for me. That's the darker side of my character. But you know, I really thought I would never see him again. I always wanted to keep him away from Karen and the kids. Yeah. And these are some of the last slides. Charlie, you're leaving at the interesting point. Believe it or not, there's also such a thing as a cowboy church. There's one up in Junction City too, and they're starting to come all around. This one is the Open Range Fellowship, and a guy I'd gone to school with invited me to come, and I went there because it's in that little area. If you want to network with people or find old friends, the thing you do is you go to church, and yeah, most of the people go to church, and this is a rodeo grounds right next to the open range. And longhorns, they've got all kinds. My father would have loved this place. That's the cross up there, but there's chaps up there, and a rope. Yep, the rodeo grounds. They have their services on Thursday nights because cowboys are busy on the weekends, and they're at rodeos and things. And they have their own service on Thursday night. They don't encroach on churches that have their services on Wednesday night. But this was, this is after the Christmas service, and they have a great band. I mean, a great rocking band. And there are black people that go there too. Here's a black man who's playing the saxophone with the Christmas songs. And yeah, this is the full moon over Lickskillet. Oh, and after telling you all this for let's see how long, pretty good while. I mean, I'm sure you all just love this place and would love to go there. I mean, it's a wonderful area. You know, it's got good food, good music. Yeah, there are alligators and cottonmouth moccasins. It gets, you know, they'll have maybe 100 days in a row of over 100 degrees. So if you like it warm, it's a great place. Unfortunately, the poverty down there is just extraordinary. It's so much more than what we have in Oregon. I know most of us in this room don't feel like we're wealthy, but believe me, you get to some of the other parts of the country where people are really poor, and you see that, yes, most of us in this room are what they would consider wealthy or very well off. It's a place where one person can make a difference because it's so small. And I liked being called, they call everybody, if you're one day older than somebody, they call you sir or ma'am. And I liked that, being called sir all the time. And store clerks and people in the restaurant, you know, when they check you out, they always say something like, have a blessed day, a blessed day. It's a very religious place. Now, if you say that, tell somebody up here to have a blessed day, you probably won't keep your job very long. Down there, that is the culture. There's just still been centuries of the racial strife and white privilege, and I grew up with knowing I had privilege. It was hammered into me, and it was hammered into me that wasn't something to take advantage of with people. It was something that you used to help people who needed. So that's the way I was raised, to when somebody needed help, you try to help them if you can. Yeah, I really enjoyed being down there and trying to get Karen into being a country girl. I think you'll make it as a country girl, honey. You just can't wait to get back there. And this is from, they decorated the gate for Christmas. So Merry Christmas from Lickskillet. Oh, finally, this woman here was a good friend of her husband. She collects famous pieces of art, and her husband passed away a couple of years ago. And she was a great help. Oh, this guy here, childhood friend. Our mothers were pregnant at the same time. They'd gone to finishing school together. They were close friends. We were in the crib at the same time. Our birthdays about 3 months apart. And we went to school together. But then when I moved to Oregon, and we were part of the New South young people who were supposed to rebuild the South better. And then I came up here to Oregon ostensibly to do railroad construction and build a railroad at Cerro Gordo. And then I was going to go back to Louisiana and outcompete my uncles in business and take the company back. So when I came out here, I was still looking at trying to take the company back. But once I got out of the spectrum of Louisiana and on my own, I found that, you know, I liked being my own person. I liked being where nobody knew who A.C. Campbell was. I liked, just being my own guy. So we didn't talk for 40 years. What did he say? Oh yeah, he told you want to know how liberal Williamson is? You want to know how liberal Steve Williamson is? I'll tell you how goddamn liberal he is. Yeah, he moved to an all-white state so he could smoke pot. That's how goddamn liberal Steve Williamson is. And compared to Louisiana and most places, Oregon is pretty much all white, and we have very few people of color. So she arranged this dinner for us to get back together. He apologized to Karen because he had insulted Karen really badly when we first got married, and we had not talked for over 40 years. So, I moved out here from Louisiana. This is the house in the French Quarter that I lived in New Orleans right before coming out here. And I liked it a lot, but the 24/7 party lifestyle of New Orleans really sucked me and my roommate in. I was out here and I got a call. We had another roommate, a woman named Prudence, and I never found out if that was her real name or not. But Prudence was a streetwalker. She was a prostitute, and she was living in our house but doing her trade out in the French Quarter. Well, when I came out here to Oregon to visit, my roommate and I he let her use my bedroom, and he let her use my bedroom for her work. And when you know, the police raid the house. They arrest her, they arrest my roommate, get kicked out of the house, and I got no place to go back to, at least in New Orleans. And because my friend was arrested for dealing cocaine, which I was never interested in, but that was one of the things that was starting to go really sideways. We were getting around harder drugs, and that was so. And lived right across the street from St. Louis Cemetery. This tomb right here is the tomb of the famous voodoo queen Marie Laveau. And if you were from South Louisiana, everybody knew the name of Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans. And people to this day go to her tomb and make marks and leave offerings there to her. They ask her for blessings and favors. She's a voodoo saint practically. And she was Catholic all of her life too, because down there they'll go to, you know, the hoodoo and voodoo folks, they'll go from church to the other thing just real easily. Oops. This is me in 1975 when I came to Oregon, and I was a Gandy dancer. And does anybody know what a Gandy dancer was? Yes. That's right. That's right. And in fact, you carried an iron beam where you straightened up the ties and the iron beam, and that was made by the Gandy Company. So guys that used that were called Gandy dancers. If you're ever on Jeopardy, they might ask that. Oh, and yeah. So this is near Cerro Gordo, you know, down. This is where the railroad came across Rail River Road. And of course, Karen, when she worked at K&D Radio back in the early 80s, I don't think we were married yet when this article was in the Sentinel. Yeah, Karen Hamilton. And thank you so much for listening to this. I so appreciate it.